All right, so let's talk about pro-union, anti-union, and ambivalence, Mike. From what I've seen, you are at best ambivalent about unions, if not outright anti-union. You don't seem particularly invested in whether they exist beyond saying the right things in public and, making speaking appearances at union halls. Maybe you're not on a mission to destroy them, but I reject outright the idea that you are actively pro-union. I don't believe it, and I'll defend that position going forward. In preparing for the first video and this one, I watched dozens of hours of you droning on and on about the honor and glory and dignity of hard work and about your sweat pledge and blue collar dirty jobs and on and all that stuff. And by the way, I guess just as an aside here, that sweat pledge of yours is just straight garbage, man. No matter what else comes of this, that I will not stop saying that thing is garbage. It's truly a terrible read. It's a terrible document, and you should not make people sign that crap. And by the way, the only thing worse than the sweat pledge is your little what was it? Safety third. Your little safety third model, right? I've personally seen what happens when people don't take safety as being the primary thing that they're doing with their job. When they view safety as being third. And listen, I get it. I've heard you talk about it, right? Safety third is like a big, funny joke, right? A subversive take to get people talking. I understand. But I've had the misfortune of finding a woman pinned to a wall by a forklift. And I had to be the guy that hopped on the forklift and pulled it off of her. And I watched her collapse to a concrete warehouse floor with a shattered hip, a broken femur, and cracked ribs. I knew a guy who he didn't properly lock out, tag out when he was working on a truck and got crushed to death. I saw a guy mangle his leg in a machine because he didn't properly turn the power off and lock out, tag out again. So, like a subversive, edgy motto to get people talking, whatever nonsense you talk about it somehow falls short to me, right? And I bet it falls short to the woman who got crushed by that forklift and the guy who got his leg mangled. And I sure as shit know that it falls short to the wife and the two children who never saw their husband or father again. There's just no need for that sort of nonsense, right? No matter how subversive and funny you think it is. So, all right. So back to the main point here. I listened to all of those hours of you talking, right? I read your blog posts, tweets, Facebook posts, everything that I could find. And I kept listening and I kept reading and I used Control F to search for keywords, right? Union, organized labor, so on. I searched the transcripts and the blog posts and the interviews, and I'm going to keep it a buck with you, Mike. The results were kind of lacking. All right. And they still are. I went to Twitter just yesterday, something which I absolutely hate doing, and I searched your posts. I looked up things like union, labor, organized labor, and so on. After doing that, looking up about 10 different words and phrases, just one post popped up after a lot of scrolling, which was semi-relevant. And it was you responding to an accusation of being anti-union. You responded to a mother by being thoroughly not pro-union. You basically told a mother that her son could learn to weld and maybe he could get a union job or maybe not. You didn't really worry about it because he didn't want to sign your sweat pledge. And because of that, you denied a scholarship, right? And that's up to you, right? It's your money to hand out. But to me, it's just more ambivalence. It's not pro-union. I scoured your posts on multiple platforms and, to be honest, didn't find shit. Literally not one tweet, not one post saying organize a union. Not one saying go, I don't know, fight, strike, supporting a strike, nothing. That's not being pro-union. The closest that I got were a few Labor Day posts, which I was like, oh, hey, he's talking about Labor Day. But those were just to celebrate Mike Rowe Works' anniversary. And you never mentioned unions or organized labor in any of those Labor Day posts. In one Labor Day post, you linked to an article. The tweet says this. It says, I was going to write something substantive for Labor Day, but realized I could do no better. Give it a look if you're curious about why Mike Rowe Works is celebrating its 10th anniversary today. And the link that you provided was to an article written by Stephen Malanga. He is an outspoken, anti-union, conservative hack who has made a career of trashing labor unions, and especially public sector unions. How very pro-labor, pro-union of you, Mike. You did that on Labor Day, no less. What an absolute legend. And this is the one day where we should be talking about organized labor all day, and we got not a single word about it from you. This is what the big supposed pro-labor guy could do no better than. The article itself is just, the usual libertarian, individualistic work ethic nonsense that Mike Rowe seems to almost like deify in his work. And that's what you chose to post on Labor Day. So let's run through a few questions here, some rhetorical, some not, some I know the answers to already. And let's use these to calibrate where you might stand for real on unions. Do you support the single best piece of pro-union legislation that has come through our government at all in my entire life? And I am 48. And that is the PRO Act. No, you don't. You've made it very clear. Why don't you? It's because you don't like the idea of millions of workers being properly classified as employees instead of being exploited as so-called independent contractors. You're obsessed with this fantastical myth of the power of independent negotiations, as if that's ever worked for the average worker under capitalism in America. It has not. That fantasy is exactly why unions had to exist in the first place, to correct the power imbalance. You really think that gig workers benefit by being considered independent contractors? You cannot possibly believe that. And those are the guys that you're leaving behind by not supporting this act. Those are the people that you're helping deprive of justice and dignity. Now, at best, as far as I can tell at least, you just don't understand what the bill is saying. At worst, you're deliberately misleading people. I'd like to believe it's ignorance, not dishonesty. Now, most of your criticism seems rooted in what happened in California with Bill AB 5, which was a bill aimed at protecting gig workers, yes, but also one with issues that were inherent in the bill. You're right about that. It was not a good bill. Even worse is that it was then gutted by the corporate-funded Proposition 22. You are right to criticize that. But the PRO Act is a much better, more refined, more well-written piece of legislation. Also, in the PRO Act, the definition of employee that you're so concerned about, as far as I can tell, it only applies to NLRA purposes regarding collective bargaining rights, not wages or benefits. Even gig workers, or actually, you know what? Collective bargaining rights might not be the right way to say that. It's about whether or not they can organize a union. So even gig workers would only be considered employees in this case for the purposes of forming and joining a union, not It has nothing to do with like their status for wages and benefits. For all other aspects, they would still be classified as independent contractors, right? For everything from wages and benefits to taxes and everything else. Now, unlike you, I'll stop short of accusing you of lying, and I'll assume that you just don't understand. Frankly, I wish that this bill went further, but it's nowhere near where you claim it is. Do you support minimum wage? Kind of. From what I've heard you say, you sort of kind of do a little bit, but not enough. You've said that you don't support federal or even state level minimum wages, but maybe, I guess, you support local ones, maybe citywide ones. Now, personally, I think we need stronger, broader laws on this subject, but at least you're a little bit, tiny bit on board. Okay, now here are some questions that I don't know the answers to, but I can and will take a guess on how you'd answer just from listening to you talk about this stuff for hours. Do you support card check? I seriously doubt this one. Your past statements and hyper-individualistic views make it incredibly hard to believe that you would support a card check rule. Do you support right to work, or do you support repealing right to work laws? I'm going to bet that you don't, Mike. It's highly doubtful. You seem pretty committed to the idea of the individual negotiation thing as being the gold standard of, human development. I disagree. I think right to work laws are terrible. They're only there to destroy unions, not provide freedom for workers, and we need to get rid of them. Do you support repealing Taft-Hartley? Almost certainly not, right? Hey, if I'm wrong, surprise me. It'd be nice. So if I'm correct on even half of those, then riddle me this, Mike. How exactly are you pro-union? I mean, lay it out there, man. How are you pro-union if you don't support any of those things? How can you claim that, being pro-union, when you seem to oppose or be indifferent to, at best, right, about every single meaningful pro-labor policy that comes up? Here's one more. Do you support unions coordinating to align contracts to expire on May Day of 2028 to create the conditions for a general strike and stronger, greater bargaining power? As far as I can tell, no. God, I have never heard you talk about it, but I have a really hard time believing that you could possibly support something that was, like, A, so bold, B, so against the corporate interest, and C, so worker-led. I haven't heard you talk about it, but I can't imagine. So as far as I can tell, you are against every single major effort to create new unions, to grow existing ones, or to strengthen existing ones. Are you for anything at all in this space? Like, what do you support? If you supported even one or two meaningful initiatives, maybe there'd be something to hang your hat on. Maybe there'd be something to talk about with you. But from what I've seen, it's just no, right up and down that whole board. So I guess the question is, what legislation do you support to help unions grow? What pro-union messaging are you pushing out there on your social media, in your speeches? Because that has to be the baseline. That's what it means to be pro-union, to be pro-labor, to be pro-working class. But that's not what you do. You either don't support these things, push back on them, or worse, you cross picket lines and you scab. It's not even neutrality. Ambivalence and low effort, qualified support don't make you pro anything. That's not support, it's complacency. And in practice, this sort of ambivalence is just anti-unionism by another name. So let's look at this from another angle. Who's paying you? Who's funding these things? Now, I'm not saying that you're being bribed or being told what to say. I'm not calling you corrupt, Mike Rowe. I want you to hear that. This is not my claim. What I am saying is this. If you were actually pro-union in any meaningful way, the Koch brothers wouldn't give you a dime. They wouldn't give you a penny. Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or United Technologies, they would not give you a single penny. A huge chunk of your backers would vanish overnight. They're not paying you to say what they want. Again, I don't believe that. I'm hoping that's not true. The point is that you're already saying it. You're saying it without the money. They just fund you because you're saying it. If you ever came out in strong support of unions, of organized labor, if you actually pushed for legislation like the PRO Act or called for new union building, union strengthening, union growing, all of those checks, all of that funding would stop instantly. Just like that, it would be over. Now, you can justify taking that money however you want. I'm not even going to argue with you. You want to fund Mike Rowe Works, whatever, justify it. But let's not pretend that we all can't see exactly what this all means. We know why these particular people are comfortable supporting you, and it's not because you are a threat to them or to capital. And here's another way to gauge it. Let's look at your audience. Let's look at your fans. Let's look at the people who came after me in the comments, right? That you sent over. Not a single pro-union message was left in those comments, but plenty of anti-union rhetoric was. That's who hears you. That's who listens to you. That's who has this weird parasocial relationship with you. These are the people that you're energizing with the things that you do. So let's take a look at this comment here. I'll put it up. I'm going to black out the name to avoid throwing the person's name out there. It's fine. But here's what it said. It starts off, I've only worked in a couple of union shops by choice. Just as one example as to why, the first one I worked in, I was hired at my university to do grounds work. It turns out that the university was trying to cut costs by hiring students to undercut the overpaid union workers. Now, at first, when I read this, it sounded like a promising story. He seems like in the union, got hired as a groundskeeper at this college. Maybe he's upset that the university was using student labor to undercut union wages. I'd be upset about that too, right? And I'm just like, wow, maybe we're about to hear a story about some righteous solidarity, right? Some righteous worker action. And he continues, because the university hired me to undercut the union pay using student employment as an excuse, union employees treated me like crap because it was obviously my fault. They treated me more like crap the harder I worked because it made them look bad when they fucked off all day. Oh my God, Mike Rowe. The commenter was the scab. The scab was in the building the entire time, Mike Rowe, and he was in your audience. And now, here he is, whining that the union workers treated his scab ass poorly. They should have. That's the thing they should have. He was scabbing, Mike Rowe. He was there. You were there. You were, are, and remain a scab, anonymous YouTube commenter. And this guy doubles down with, the classic anti-union trope that union workers are sitting around all day getting paid to do nothing. Probably most likely bullshit, right? And he goes on a whole multi-comment rant with more of the same. But here's the actual point, Mike, the reason why I bring this comment up. If you're truly pro-union, or even just not anti-union, right? If you're ambivalent, I guess, then why is this kind of commenter feeling at home in your audience? Why is your fan base full of people openly hostile to organized labor? Where are your pro-union supporters? None of them came in the comments. Where are the comments from, people defending solidarity, from defending bargaining, defending labor rights? None of them were there. If you were half as pro-union as you claim to be, a guy like this, a self-described scab who does not like union workers, would not feel comfortable in your space. He certainly wouldn't be throwing on his little rat cape and flying to your defense in a parasocial weird behavior and coming into my comments and, trashing workers. They'd be, I guess, you know what? Say what you will about me. But my audience, a scab would not last 5 minutes in my audience. They'd be chased off on the rhetoric alone. They wouldn't feel supported or welcome or comfortable because they aren't welcome and they shouldn't be comfortable. They'd know that they were on the wrong side of everything that I talk about and they wouldn't hang around, and they sure as hell wouldn't be running around defending me in other people's social media posts, right? Can you say the same about your audience? No, obviously not, because it literally just happened. You are funded by massive anti-union corporations. Your audience is packed with people who are proudly, loudly, virulently anti-union. You've got actual scabs in the comments defending you. And you're a picket line breaking scab yourself. So tell me again, what exactly did I get wrong in my previous video? Because from where I'm sitting, everything that actually mattered in that video was dead on. And yeah, I'm a muckraker, right? And one day I was out there raking that muck with my rake, and I found something under all that muck. And I hooked it with my rake and I dragged it out. And what I found was Mike Rowe, a scab. And just to close this out, if Mike Rowe has another Facebook boomer meltdown and crushes my career before it even starts, let me leave you with what Joe Hill told Big Bill Haywood before he was wrongly executed by the state. I die like a true blue rebel. Don't waste any time mourning. Organize. And that's it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Love you all. That's it.